Welcome back. Now let's take a look at what's making the newspaper front page across the major headlines for today. We have Nation, Punch, Vanguard, and Daily Trust. Now in the Nation's headline, we have State Police can't wait, Tinubu tells governors. And then in the Punch, we have oil revenue roll. President's defense Tinubu as legal titans split over executive orders. Now in the Daily Trust, Walida coalition demands release probe. Now in the Guardian, election campaign spending to stress test CBN's Naira inflation grip. Now let's take as it is in the Daily Trust, where we are going to be anchoring just now. Coalition demands release probe. Now it said that a coalition of civil society groups has called for the immediate release of Walida alongside demands for a transparent investigation into the circumstances surrounding the matter. The coalition argues that due process must be followed and that authorities should publicly clarify the allegations and legal basis for any detention. Human rights advocates are closely watching developments as pressure mounts for accountability and openness in handling the case. Expect more reactions from advocacy groups in the coming days. Mr. Chair, I would like to hear your thoughts on this.
All right. Looking at this story on the Daily Trust newspaper,
Yes,
right?
yes.
You know, it's quite disheartening when you see stories like this. But if we look at it in context, what is at stake here? We are told that as around 2023, a young girl of about 16 years of age got missing, the family not knowing where she was or her whereabouts as at that time until 2025, where the father, we're told, received an anonymous call informing him that the daughter, Walida, is in Abuja. You know, and when you look at the whole situation, the whole story is being pointed that one Ifeanyi Chukwu Onyewenyi of DSS, you know, was fingered as being the one who has allegedly adopted this young girl from Jigawa State to Abuja. And then one begins to ask, what is at stake here? And if you go further, it becomes a lot of issues are being unraveled. And when I look at this whole issue, I begin to see a lot of pointers to the Nigeria. When you look at this story from the microscopic part of Nigeria, you see a lot of things that are wrong with the nation. But we look at this issue from the the point-to-point basis of what is at stake here. Now, we are told that a court order has been obtained for this young lady to be reunited with the family, with the Ifeanyi of the DSS and the DSS not heeding or obeying this court order. You know, I did tell you that this points to a lot of things that are wrong, the anomalies that is in our nation, where people no longer obey court orders, you know, is worrisome. One is expected that irrespective of position or whatever is happening, when a court process is served on anybody, that the first thing one should do is to obey the court order. But looking at this issue on the merit, we are told that this young girl is not just being found in Abuja, but she is currently a nursing mother, and that the said DSS operative Ifeanyi Onyewenyi, intends to marry her, leading to a lot of questions. And this issue has been up, this is not the first time it's coming up in the news, and we are told that a coalition of women are now, canvassing and asking for the return of this same girl to the family in Jigawa State, leading to the Federation of Muslim Women Association coming together, and another women group called WID coming together to ask that she be reunited. And then I begin to probe and to see what the issue here. And for me, I would not be parochial in being able to shine the torchlight on this very issue. One thing is certain: is this a romantic issue? Is Walida and the said Ifeanyi of DSS in love with each other? Did they elope from Jigawa State? These are the questions that one may objectively want to ask. But however, how would an adult, romantically elope with a minor? Because when you look at the age that we were told, at 16 years of age, Walida is a minor. And being a minor, she is not up to the age of consent by the Nigerian Constitution. What does Nigerian Constitution say? That the age of consent, starts from 18, whereby the Walida as a person can decide, without the consent of her parents, to make her own decision. But at 16, she is still within the, under the custody of her parents. Most legal decisions will be taken by her parents, beginning to raise a whole lot of issues here. Did Ifeanyi elope with this young lady under the authority that he is a DSS staff? This is another question mark here. Now, let's leave that aside. One thing again that is quite disturbing with this whole issue is that Walida, the family of Walida and the coalition had gone to court serving DSS to ensure that a court process is obeyed, and the information available is that the DSS is not obeying court order. That leaves a lot to be desired. When I look at this issue, the way I see it, I hope I'll be able to, at the end of the day, be able to go home, without an invitation from the DSS, being that DSS is involved here. But I think that this abuse of process, the DSS of all people, of all organizations, should be at the forefront of obeying the rule of law. When you get a court order, you have to obey it, irrespective of the agency that is involved. Now, looking at it at merit, on what basis was Ifeanyi able to, tow Walida from Jigawa State to Abuja? These are the questions. Did he obtain the consent of the parents? Now, when you go further to study this whole issue, now we are being told, we do not decide to believe that she is of at the age of consent, being that she is 22 now. Now, leaving the question, at what age was she allegedly taken away from Jigawa State? And what should DSS do at this point in time? And I tell you one thing, if Ifeanyi Onyewenyi is a staff or a personnel of the DSS, then I can ask the question, is Ifeanyi Onyewenyi, a code name or his real name? If that is a real name, if he's an operative of DSS and that is real name, then what is he doing in Jigawa State? Was his position compromised, and is he being protected by a certain power within DSS? Nobody should be above the law. If he has contravened the law, what the DSS needs to do is to investigate their personnel and ensure that their personnel is punished according to the law and not to protect one of theirs. And I'm raising the question, if his name is actually Ifeanyi Onyewenyi and he is an operative of DSS, in what capacity does he operate as a personnel of DSS? Is he in the intelligence, or is he just an administrative personnel that being compromised will not be an issue? And I tell you, if he is an intelligent person, he is already compromised because he is now in the media space. People will be able to recognize him. That means he cannot go on undercover operations. He is really compromised. And then the question is, if an agency like DSS cannot obey the rule of law, then what is left of the common man in Nigeria? These are the issues that one needs to look at. The DSS need to, rethink their whole involvement in this whole issue. If they are on the part of seeing that the right thing is done, one thing is that they cannot be a judge in their own case because their personnel is involved, and the family of Walida, the Abdulhad family, is saying that the DSS is covering up the whole issue and protecting Ifeanyi Onyewenyi. If he has allegedly did abduct the young girl, because if she's not at the age of consent, it is abduction. One will not look at it as a romantic entanglement where they can elope. No. It will be seen, because I suppose that he, Ifeanyi, understands and knows the law if he is a personnel of DSS, and he knows what the repercussion is. So the DSS shouldn't be involved in such a cover-up, and he should be made to, first of all, face the wrath of law for disobeying a court ruling, because I understand that it's over a month that a court in Jigawa State had issued an order for the girl to be, what do I use? To be moved from Abuja and be reunited to the family in Jigawa State. So what you need to do inter alia is to move, so you see that you obey the court order. And I'm not aware that there's a substituting court order to counter the order of the court from Jigawa State. So this issue, when I look at it, I tell you, it points to a whole lot of issues, things that are wrong in the nation, where people no longer obey the rule of law, where the judiciary is neglected, where the rules of the courts are neglected. It leaves more to be desired. And, in Igbo language, they tell you that when a mother goat is chewing, that the child looks at it to learn how to chew as well. And these things trickle down. If those are the hem of affairs, do not obey court orders, what do you expect from those at the down part of the ladder? So that is what it is in Nigeria, that people no longer care or obey the rule of law, and it becomes more worrisome that people are not heeding to court order. And I think DSS should do the right thing by being forthright in this affair and investigating their own personnel and making it public. But they should start by obeying the rules of the court. And again, there is another issue here that may not be popular opinion. Do you understand? Because I speak to this because Jigawa State is a terrain I know very well. I've operated around Jigawa State very well, and I understand the culture. I understand the terrain very well. And that culture is this which is not what we are reading in the front pages of the newspapers. We have painted a picture of where a DSS operative, forcefully, allegedly, whisked away a young girl and forcefully wants to marry her. And when you want to marry somebody's daughter, where do you go to pay dowry? Is it not when there's harmony? There has to be harmony between you and your prospective in-laws, and you discuss, because where are you going to pay dowry? But in this instance, from benefit of hindsight of what I know about the cultural practice in Jigawa State, where beyond the fact that we are looking at it from the underage perspective, and I tell you one thing, at 16, most girls in Jigawa State are married.
Oh.
Yes, a whole lot of them. If a girl, as at when I operated around that area, at 16 you're not married, then your family will be worried. This is the reality of things on ground. It's not about what is right or not. I'm telling you what I witnessed, what I lived. So in this instance, while one may say that she may not be of legal age, of consenting, that she's not yet a consenting adult, but I want to look at it on the reality on ground. That at that age, most young girls are married out in Jigawa State. And I'm expecting that perhaps the DSS personnel, when you got entangled with this young girl and not getting the concept of the family, again, it is frowned against. Nigeria is a very complex religious setting where there is no inter-religious marriage. And I tell you, in Jigawa State, for example, it will be frowned at for a non-Muslim to be seen entangled to the extent of wanting to marry a Muslim girl. Perhaps this is their story leading to why they eloped from Jigawa State. I'm alluding, I'm not there, but I'm speaking based on what I witnessed. I've been around Duse, I've been around Hadija, and many other parts of Jigawa State, for example, and that is what is obtainable. You may risk being killed if you're being seen entangled with their daughters and you are not of the same faith. So this may be the case here, and both of them decided to elope to evade the scrutinizing eyes and hisses from all and sundry in Jigawa State, leading to why they elope to Abuja. This is me alluding. I'm not holding forth for Mr. Ifeanyi, but be that as it may, the emphasis here is that one, that people shouldn't be encouraged to go into relationship with minors. The law is against it. And if one is found to have contravened that part of the law, such a person or such an individual, irrespective of position, affiliation, or who their backers or godfather is, should be meant to face the wrath of the law. And one of the things I was looking at for while going through this story is that I have not seen NAPTIP involved in this issue, because issues like this are treated as trafficking, because you've whisked this very young girl from Jigawa State to Abuja, and I have not seen this coalition who are asking and going to court, advocating on behalf of Walida, I've not seen them involve NAPTIP. I was expecting that NAPTIP should be involved, let it now become inter-agency affair, since the DSS, we are being told is shielding Ifeanyi from, being prosecuted or from uniting the girl with the family. But here again, there is another issue. This is a nursing mother, they have a baby together. So at this point, what we should be looking at is an amicable resolution of the issue, but that's not to say that he is innocent of all alleged allegations leveled against him. And again, one may want to look at was, even though she should be said to be a minor, was she abducted or she willingly, followed Ifeanyi to Abuja? And like I did mention, this is a nursing mother now. The situation is different. They have a baby together, and it should be looked at from that perspective. But there is a whole, lot of issues involved here beyond what we are seeing in the media. I understand the culture in Jigawa State. I know that it's quite aggressive against non-believers mingling with supposed believers, and this could be the case here. However, the emphasis I want to lay on the table is that we have to obey the rule of law. We have to be obedient to the rulings of the court, because without that, it becomes an animal kingdom where it becomes the rule of the fittest. And a DSS in this whole issue, I don't know if they are brought in to give more emphasis, to give more weight to the story, but they should be seen to be doing the right thing, and they should be at the forefront of obeying the rule of law. And like I did say, if this is an operative of a DSS, he is already compromised and should be either redeployed to kitchen affairs, to administrative duties, because he can no longer function well as an intelligent personnel. And being roped, one of the the trainings you get is not to get entangled in issues like this as a trained operative.
All right, thank you very much for that extensive commentary on the Daily Trust. You're still watching Sunrise on ANEKE TV. Now we move over to the newspaper headlines, especially the one from the Nation's newspaper. State police can't wait, Tinubu tells governors. State police can't wait, Tinubu tells governors. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has made it clear the conversation around state police can no longer be delayed. Addressing the governors, the president reportedly stressed that the growing insecurity across parts of the country demands urgent structural reform, and state policing is no longer an idea for tomorrow, but a necessity for today. He urged state leaders to intensify consultations and push constitutional processes forward, saying the centralized policing could help tackle banditry, kidnapping, and communal clashes more effectively. Security reform is back at the center of national debate, and it appears momentum is building. Mr. Uche, you are seeing what's happening here in the nations. What is really happening?
All right. The headline here is that the state police can't wait, Tinubu tells governors.
Yes.
And here is my opinion on this very issue. We've been very vocal about issues around state police, given the level of insecurity that we are witnessing in Nigeria at this moment. Nigeria has never had it this rough. Okay. This for the first time. Why we know that the buck does not, that it didn't start from this administration, but the buck stops on their table. And I tell you that Nigeria has never had this rough, where you wake up every morning, there is in the news of killings, by non-state actors. However, looking at this story by the Nation, I tell you one thing, I want to believe that Mr. President is not really keen about state police, because if Mr. President is keen about the state police, telling governors that it can't wait, I don't think that the president that I know, the president
Bola Ahmed
Tinubu, is one who would, pander to the caprice or the non-action of governors when he wants something. He's a man I've taken time to study over time, starting from his time, as a NADECO operative to his time as a senator and governor of Lagos State, and then becoming the president of Nigeria. He is one man that I know that always find a way to have his way when he wants something. And I expect when it comes to issue around state police that he would move with the same urgency that he moved with the signing of the Electoral Act, you know, that we saw the other day, which he described as a gift to the nation. That's the man I know. That's the sweetness which the Bola Ahmed Tinubu that I know moves. He is so swift when he wants something, and he rarely rests until he gets it done. And I expect the same, you know, sense of urgency in this issue of state police. So telling governors that he can no longer wait, it will have it on good authority that as at the last count, most states are consenting to the issue of state police. In fact, most of the governors are at the forefront of advocating for state police. So coming back to, you know, want us to believe that you're throwing the gauntlet at the governors for that decision, you know, I for one look at that and I take it with a pinch of salt. Now, where are we? Given where we are as a people in terms of insecurity, we shouldn't be, you know, continue to discuss this. Over time, we've called for a holistic security conference where Nigerians will need to sit down and marshal a plan on how to tackle insecurity in Nigeria. As I speak to you, there's no part of this nation where people feel safe. Yeah, the northern part of the country is always in the news because of insecurity. But I tell you that when you traverse other regions in this nation, people in Osun and Ondo State, I tell you, are quite apprehensive given the incursion of these insurgents through Kwara State, moving forward towards their boundaries. And the same in southeast Nigeria, but for Enugu State that has started to, you know, stem the tide in terms of security with the actions of the governor, you know, with the command and control center at the Lion Building, the deployment of drones and deployment of men and officers of the police force, where we begin to have a little respite in terms of security. But I tell you, people are quite apprehensive to travel within southeast Nigeria, and same story is replicable in south Nigeria and all across. But looking at the issue, the other day we lost 50 of our citizens. I'm speaking to human life, not cows. These are human beings who had dreams and aspiration, who had plans for their life. They were cut short by daredevil bandits in Nigeria, where we were told that they came with over 150 motorbikes and were able to, you know, massacre our citizens and then depart without being challenged. It becomes more worrisome. And one of the issues over time that we've, you know, spoken eloquently about to be able to help us tame the tide is issues around state police. We are aware, and everybody in this nation is aware, Mr. President is aware, and those are the subnationals, the governors, local government, everybody is aware that the security architecture as is composed are overwhelmed at this point in time, leading to why Mr. President made that call for there to be an urgent recruitment into the army and the police. If the federal architecture alone cannot confront the situation, then why are we wasting more time to canvas and then hasten the legal actions that is needed or the legislative actions that is needed to ensure that state police becomes a team, if that's the way to go to stem the tide? And I stand on the side of those who have been canvassing for state police, you know, seeing what I've seen in Nigeria over time. There's not been a time where people find it difficult to travel in and around the country. This for the first time where we'll have a foreign government coming to intervene in our security issues. While Nigeria was at war with Biafra, I tell you that with the swiftness or the involvement of the United States in this whole security challenge we are facing in then, as to compare to 1967 to 1970, when the Nigerian Biafra Civil War was on, it took time before the foreign governments got involved into the war. And here we are now have boots on ground, even though we are told that they are non-combatant personnel of the United States government. But the fact is that they are on ground, and we are told we are collaborating with them, telling you that the situation has become even more dense, more intense, and more worrisome. Forget the numbers that we are getting from the newspapers. What about the unreported cases? How are people in Zafra faring? How are people in Plateau faring? The story is same every day. People are killed, villages are ransacked, people are in IDP camp, and we are telling the governors? No, I do not buy into it. I do not see Mr. President to wanting state police, and I know that when he wants state police, he will place a demand. Nigeria today is an APC state, and everybody is willing to dance to the whims and caprices of Mr. President. It's just for Mr. President to say, make a demand. The legislature is there to move with haste to see that it happens. So, not seeing any evident action regarding state police keeps me worrisome. You know, and I keep emphasizing the speeches that were made at the Congress of the United States when they were reviewing the insecurity in Nigeria. And one thing that has stuck with me is when they said that they are, you know, very skeptical to the courage and the willingness of our government to confront the security challenge that we face. And this issue on the Nation newspaper, you know, speaks eloquently to it. Mr. President can't be asking the governors. When he places a demand, the bulk of the governors are in APC. They are his party members. They know and they have the mechanism to whip them in line. In fact, this should be one of the swiftest bills. No government, no federal government in Nigeria has had it this good. Even during when the PDP hosts were, it wasn't easy for them. There was a very, viable opposition compared to what we have today. We have an opposition that is fragmented, disseminated, without one concept. There's no political opposition in Nigeria as of today. Yes, when we talk about coalition, where is the coalition? I can tell you that the coalition at this moment is not coalescing. The PDP is so fragmented that we don't know the PDP. When we mention the PDP, we don't know the PDP that we'll be dealing with. Or is it the Labour Party that is still reeled in crisis of finding who will be their head or the chairman of the political party? So, Mr. President, in this dispensation, has it nice and well and can achieve whatever he wants. There's not been any time in Nigeria where we are tilting towards a one-party state than this. So, telling me or telling the governors that it's time, that it can no longer be delayed, I take exception to that. That when he places a demand on the Senate led by Senator Godswill Akpabio, they will move with haste and they will see that it's done. What do we need? Yes, it requires a constitutional amendment across the states and the local governments as well. But I tell you, with a government that controls the bulk of the states, over 30, if I'm not mistaken, they won't face opposition. For example, if we were to cite the example in Enugu, for example, if the governor of Enugu State stands with Mr. President on state policing, who would oppose it? When we know that both the local governments, the councillors, and everyone is already in APC, and they will be willing to toe the line of the governor. So, I do not see the opposition here. What I see here is lack of will to implement state police. And, it leading me to look at that whole report about when a certain individual was the governor of Anambra State, stating how he was able to tame bank robberies in Anambra then, that he provided what they call community policing, equipped them so that it was so difficult for you to operate, rob, or commit crime in one community and you're able to escape into the other community without being apprehended. And that tells you the power of community or state policing. Yes. And I tell you, until we call a national conference where everyone will sit down and deliberate on issue of security, we may not have peace in this nation. Because obviously, despite the homogeneous security budgets that we have, to study this issue around insecurity, seems not to be producing the needed result. And I ask, what is the challenge? Are we really overwhelmed? A lot of times when I interact with people, they tell me that in this fight against the insurgents, that there's no red line, is more of a guerrilla warfare. Then how do you combat guerrilla warfare? There are nations that have combated guerrilla warfare. What do? It's more of intelligence. So what you are seeing is that there is a failure of intelligence. With intelligence, you will be able to defeat any ragtag army. Call it ISWAP, call it ISIS, call it LACROMA. When you organize efficiently and involve your intelligence network, you will be able to fragment them, disable them, and defeat them. And that is where we are. If not, if we do not show that will and that courage, then I tell you, we will continue to bury our citizens like we just did just over the weekend in Zafra.
Yeah.
And you don't know after Zafra, where next? That's the question. Because it will happen again. It's not a question of, we're a God-believing nation where everybody will say, no, not me, and all that. But it will happen again until we boldly say no. There is a situation in Mexico where we had a similar situation where insurgents are kidnapping people and using them as shield. But they had a government that said, no, enough is enough. If you do not release at so time, they decimated everybody. They incinerated everybody there, and the whole situation became, calm. Yeah. People saw that willingness of a government to go any length to see that the rest of their citizens are safe. And we've gotten to that point where the government has to show us will, because we are approaching a time where they have to show us their scorecard. We'll have to look at that scorecard, and part of the things we'll look at is issues around security, and the mark on that will determine where we'll tilt. It's not about sentiment. People need to be safe in this nation, and a whole number of times we'll talk about bringing investors into the nation. How do you attract foreign investors or even domestic investors? How are you going to attract them if people are not safe in the nation? If people can't go to their farms without paying tributes to the bandits? There are local governments in this nation where people pay tributes to bandits. We have a lot of ungoverned space in a democratic dispensation, in a nation with a sovereign government. No, it doesn't happen. And telling me that we need to deliberate or get the governors over for us to institute state police, if that is what will ensure that Nigerians are safe and sleep with their eyes closed, I tell you, when Mr. President wants it, he will demand it and he will get it. That's the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu that I know.
Oh, thank you very much for that extensive and extended commentary on the issue on the Nation's newspaper. So we move over to the other stories that we have today. The Enugu State government has approved a 150 million naira mandatory advertisement permit for political campaigns ahead of the 2026 and 2027 elections. The directive means that political parties, candidates, and campaign groups intending to mount billboards, posters, branded materials, and other outdoor campaign advertisements across the state will be required to obtain official clearance at a fixed rate. State authorities say the move is aimed at regulating campaign materials, maintaining environmental order, and preventing visual pollution during the election season. Officials argue that structured permit processes will help ensure compliance with existing advertising and public space regulations. However, the decision is already generating reactions. Some stakeholders are raising concerns about the financial implications for political actors, especially smaller parties, questioning whether the fee will affect inclusiveness and fairness in the electoral process with the 2026 and 2027 elections. And as it draws closer, this policy is expected to spark wider debate across the political landscape. So, yeah.
All right. This story coming out from Enugu State is actually, like you did read, is raising a lot of controversies, where we are told that the government of Enugu State has approved 150 million mandatory advertisement permit. It leaves a lot to be desired, especially leading towards 2026-2027 elections. 2026 build up to 2027 elections, where we are now told that candidates who intend to, make an campaign advertisement in terms of using billboard, posters, and branded materials in the state will have to, first of all, come and get a official clearance. The word official clearance, they have to first secure clearance. Then after securing clearance, they now have to pay a fixed rate of 150 million naira. There are two issues here. One, going to obtain clearance from the government, I suppose, okay, and then you pay 150 million naira. Let's start from the fee, 150 million naira. Not every political party in Enugu State or in Nigeria is as viable as the APC, the ADC, the PDP, or the Labour. So those other smaller parties, where are they going to get 150 million from for them to participate or campaign in Enugu State? it becomes worrisome.
Yes.
And then looking at making it mandatory, yes, there is regulations around placing advertisements, in Nigeria, in every state as well. But coming at this time makes us to begin to look at the situation from different binoculars. When you look at this whole issue, it begins to paint a different picture, and that picture is a picture of Enugu State that we do not want to see. It's antithesis to the Enugu States that have been projected to us over time, and it becomes more worrisome that as we are journeying towards 2027, we are beginning to see rules or laws that would think and one can project to be anti-democratic. It is anti-democratic because a lot of individuals who engage in this election, who would want to vie for positions, in other smaller parties or other, this may not be able to afford the said amount,
yes, the
right,
said amount,
to be able to,
carry on with
the advertisements and campaign in the state.
Yes.
And if campaigning is made more expensive, because very expensive, then how do you get that kind of democracy that you intend? That means you're eroding us into choosing a particular set of people who can afford it, and that's what democracy is. It's not what democracy is about. Democracy is about giving opportunity for the citizens to be able to make choice in areas of opinion,
yes,
choose who they want. Now eroding it to those who can afford it, leads you to a situation that Nigeria doesn't want to be in. And what is that situation? The godfather situation, godfatherism. It becomes where individuals who have good intention, who have the pedigree and the capacity to deliver on a position, but cannot afford it, will not go for such position, and will not be subjected to the whims and caprice of a godfather who will finance such election.
Yes.
And when one does act homogeneous amount to finance a campaign in an election, you will be answerable to such an individual, which is the albatross that Rivers State is today, which is what the governor, is been fighting over time. Today is battle against Wike in Rivers State. The other day is a song for Wike. Tomorrow is on your mandate. The other day is if they follow president from corner. A whole lot of entertainment coming out from Rivers State because there is a godfather. Because someone who we know doesn't have the capacity, the financial muscle to run for that office is meant to be in that office and has refused at times to be subjected to the will of the godfather. So it becomes more worrisome that democracy cannot thrive in an environment like this, and people need to speak up to this issue.
Yes.
And I do not believe that the governor, I want to say that he's not aware of this. I would want to shield him from this, that this should be from overzealous advisors. Speaking to 150 million, why would democracy be made to be so expensive? Why would the election be made to be so expensive in a nation grappling with underdevelopment, where people need to have the choice to choose from?
Okay.
We shouldn't make it so difficult for people to participate in electoral or in a representative democracy. No, it shouldn't. People should have the choice to pick from whoever they want, and is a period where you believe that you've worked for the people, then come openly with your scorecard. The people will rate you, and if they so rate you high, they will vote for you. You don't make it difficult for other people to participate, and it is what it is that I see this rule as being such that they intend to exclude people from participating in that election. And well-meaning people in Enugu State, the media and every civil liberty organization should put pressure to see that this amount is watered down. It has to, because it makes it very difficult for good people, capable people without finance to participate. And when you do that, you now leave people with no choice or options to choose from. You only eroded them to picking from those who can afford it. And you speak in this economy, who are the people that can afford it? Is now left for the incumbents, the ruling APC, because let's say the PDP and the little of them, but there are over 16 political parties, and if only 4 political parties can afford such an amount, is there a participatory or representative democracy? So you leave a lot to be desired. Yes. So we should not keep quiet in such. In fact, I tell you, and I speak my mind on this issue, in this aspect, if the governor is aware, doubt he is aware, but in this is not like a policy that one will see coming out from Enugu State of all places. No, this is not it, and I believe that before we get to that bridge before we get closer as we journey in 2026, that this issue will be rescinded.
Yeah.
Yes, because 150 million is
a lot.
I would use the word punitive. Is meant to punish those who would want to participate in an election against the ruling APC, because as it is, I can tell you that it's only people who are near the corridors of power or in power that can afford this. Yes, I do not see any sane businessman in this climb being able to pay such an amount for just campaign in Enugu State or in Nigeria, as the case may be. So it is quite worrisome. It's repugnant to democracy and should be jettisoned, and the government of Enugu State should receive their action and receive it pronto. They should review it as quick as possible.
If it's actually, if the governor is actually aware, so there should be.
Yes, like I did mention, I started by saying that I doubt that the governor is aware of this, that this could be, the work of overzealous personnel, commissioners, or any officials, but be that as it may, whatever informed that decision, this should be rescinded. Enugu State shouldn't be seen as a very undemocratic state or an intolerant state that wouldn't allow for competition on the opposition to participate freely. The people of Enugu State should be given the right, the freedom to choose from the array of candidates. And bringing such a benchmark of 150 million, makes it impossible for them to choose from array of candidates. One thing is certain: when you interview a lot of individuals from Enugu State, they tell you that the governor has performed, and you see the things he does, and they are visible. I tell you, election should be, when you're seeking second term, is a period where you will be rewarded for work well done. Yes. And a lot of people tell me that when it comes to Enugu State, even those in opposition, that they will willingly vote for the governor Peter Obi, but that's as state governor, right? Okay. But beyond that, there are other positions that are contestable. There is a state legislature, there is House of Rep, there is senatorial seats, and other positions that will be canvassed for and campaigned for in Enugu State. If on merit that the governor deserves a second term, he will be rewarded. But what about other people in other positions? Should people be, foreclosed from making a choice as to the array of candidates that other political parties may parade during this election, and you foreclose the lower parties from affording the cost of campaign? It becomes worrisome and shouldn't be allowed to stand. And I believe that the governor, being the man he is, I know he will instruct that this order be rescinded. This is not good for democracy and should not be encouraged in any way.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Uche. This is all for today's newspaper review. Now we move over to sports. And from today's sports, you all know that we are going to see it from the newspaper. What is happening in the world of sports? What do we have just in the papers, especially what it is in the sports? So first of all, looking at what is going on right now, you would see that Nigerians are making great efforts to be on what we could say on the limelight of football. And we are having Victor Osimhen saying that he is happy at Galatasaray despite old salaries. He is happy at Galatasaray despite old salaries. I'm so surprised that Victor Osimhen is being old. But if he is old and he is happy where he's playing, I think that is all that matters. Of course, you know that in the Turkish league, he is considered as, let me use the word, a football god or football mystery, celebrity. Generally, he is one of the celebrities that they have in the nation, and I can tell you that that is really doing a lot for us as Nigerians. Now, still in the newspaper headlines, we have Besiktas coach hails perfect Ndidi. Besiktas coach hails perfect Ndidi. Ndidi scored in their game just over the weekend, and we are looking up to having him score much more. The coach has hailed him and has hailed his efforts so far to take the team to the next level as they play. The Super Eagles captain, who came out the other day to say that when you are playing for Nigeria, a nation like Nigeria, you are expected to carry the burden of more than 200 million people. So you have to play like you owe those people your life, and that is something amazing from our captain. Now I'm still moving on to the news making it on the newspaper. In the sport, we have PSG agree 61 million euros Mbappe payment. Mbappe and PSG had a fallout, so this is a court case settlement and wages and fees owed to Mbappe that PSG would pay him back. And just down there you see Curry gets United job boost after he won last night's game against Everton. We're still going to come to that game, but we just take it further by looking at the next news just beside Ndidi's headline. We take it game by game. He will be on Europe Dreams. He will be playing for Fulhams. We take it game by game. That's what he says. So they are expected to feature in the European football. That's his dream, of course. We'll see what happens at the end of the day. Aroko Dare condemns racist abuse. And the next place we are having Atletico battle Bruges in UEFA Champions League decider. That's the game today. And we are having two Nigerians, of course. One is not going to play because he is on a match ban. I'm talking about Onyeka. He's not going to play today's game. He is playing for Club Brugge. He played in the Super Eagles game during the AFCON. He was featured in one of the games or two of the games. So today we're going to have Lukman play against Club Brugge. But we're going to see what happens as the game goes by. Now, Adams faced by goal drought. You know, Akko Adams, the man who destroyed Zidane's son on the goalpost of the match, Nigeria versus Algeria. He says that he's not shaken by not scoring so far, that he trusts what he could do, and at the end of the day he's going to deliver and bring the game to home. Now you look down, you see Laporta faces fresh money laundering probe. Laporta is facing fresh money laundering probe. Then down there you see UEFA suspend Prestiani. The game against Real Madrid, like Benfica played last week at Real Madrid was away with Benfica in their home. That raised a lot of controversy and also made us to start being more sensitive about the racial abuse in football. That news trended a lot. I'm talking about the alleged racial abuse against Vinicius Jr. of Real Madrid. It said that FIFA has given Prestiani a match ban, and it starts from the Champions League game they have tomorrow against Real Madrid. So we're expecting more rulings from FIFA as they investigate, UEFA, as they investigate into the whole event and scenario, what happened. Now, Onakoya gives Lukman chessboard. Onakoya gives Lukman chessboard. You guys know Tunde Onakoya. Tunde Onakoya, the chess in the slums guy. He has given our own Ademola Lukman the chessboard. This happened when they linked up in Spain after Tunde Onakoya went to receive an award, but unfortunately there was a lot of weather issues, so he had to stay back. He could stay up to a month so that he could be able to feature in the event. And that is what it is. And he had to link up with Ademola Lukman. He watched the game that Ademola Lukman scored, and they had to, come together. I really love it that we Nigerians, we are trending and we are making a lot of positive impact across the globe. Now, just moving on in the final newspaper headline we're having family backs Joshua's boxing return. Anthony Joshua's family backing him to return to boxing after he announced just a few weeks ago that, of course, that was, I would say few weeks ago, I could say few months ago, after he retired from boxing after the events that happened in December 28th that took the life of his two close associates along Lagos Ibadan Expressway. That was actually a sad event, and because of that, he said he's going to retire from boxing. But now he is about to return, and the family are backing him up. Like I told you, you could say you are retiring in boxing and then you still say you are not retiring, that you're coming back to box. But if it's in football, you say you are retiring, then you go on retirement. That's what it is. One of the days we're going to talk about boxing and football, which one takes a lot of strength to, that when you retire you could just go. Of course, we're going to see that as the day goes by. Now we're talking about Champions League and the matches that we're going to play today. Before I give you the update of the game yesterday, UEFA Champions League playoff draws for today. Atletico Madrid are going to face Club Brugge, and Bayer Leverkusen are going to face Olympiacos. Newcastle are going to face Karabakh, and Inter Milan are going to face Bodo Glimt. Then still on that's tomorrow. I'm going to give you the update in case tomorrow I will bring you the whole details of what tomorrow's match is going to be like. Atlanta is going to play against Borussia Dortmund. Juventus is going to play against Galatasaray, Victor Osimhen's side, and Paris Saint-Germain are going to play against Monaco. And Real Madrid, the match that everyone is looking up to because of Jose Mourinho, who is their coach. But he's not going to be just in the front of the game. On the touchline. He's going to be sits just away from the touchline because he received the red card from the ref. I said he received the red card from the ref, like he intentionally took it. No, it was according because of the whole opera that started while the whole thing was going on. So he was given that red card so that he could just have some time to rest amidst the game. Now let's go to how it happened yesterday in the Premier League as Everton did their own yesterday. But I'm just going to give you the scores. Manchester United won Everton away. This is the first time they are winning their away game, and this, of course, the first clean sheet in away since 2024. We're going to see what happens at this. And Manchester United are currently on the 4th position with 48 points, just behind Aston Villa, who has 51 points in the league. And we're going to see what happens at the end of the day, and we're going to see how it is going to be, because so far it's been a rumble. Even the match that happened that was played yesterday against Everton was actually a royal rumble in the Premier League. And this is where we're going to call it off for today's newspaper review on sports and also sports update here on ANEKE TV Sunrise. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for that in-depth analysis on the football world. There are a lot of questions. I hope one day I will be able to engage you on those questions. Okay. But thank you very much. It was indeed an in-depth sports football update. Thank you very much. And moving over to the business news update, starting from the Nigerian stock market, we'll tell you that the stock market started the week on a positive note yesterday, Monday, February 23, 2026. As the Asia Index ASI continued its bullish streak, hitting new record highs. Then we'll take a look at the market summary. The Asia Index ASI appreciated by 0.65%, closing at 196,263.55 points, up from Friday's 194,989.77 points. This performance pushed the year-to-date YTD return to approximately 25.95%. Market capitalization closed at 125.95 trillion naira, and then on the volumes traded, we saw investors traded 1.29 billion shares across 95,091 deals with a total value of 31.50 billion naira. And then when you take a look at the market breadth, despite the index gain, market breadth was slightly negative with 33 gainers against 34 losers. And then when we take a look at the top 5 gainers chart, we will see that it was dominated by the agricultural, healthcare and insurance stocks, mainly hitting the Masmon daily pricing ceiling. And the list started with Okomu Oil, the Okomu Oil Palm PLC, which closed its book yesterday on a very high note of 1,605 naira 60 kobo in the positive 10.3 0.00%, and we're looking at Fortis Global Insurance closing trading yesterday at 0.66 kobo at plus 10%, and Fison Healthcare PLC closed trading yesterday at 95 naira 50 kobo, making a plus 9.90% adjustment. And we'll see MPF Microfinance Bank closing trading yesterday at 6 naira 89 kobo, equally in the positive 9.89%. And we are looking at Infinity Trust Mortgage Bank closing its book yesterday at 17 naira 30 kobo, equally making a positive 9.84%. And then we move down to the list of the top 5 losers, where profit taking was evident in several counters, particularly in the insurance and mortgage sectors. And this list is led by the Initiatives PLC TIP, which closed its book yesterday at 17 naira 55 kobo, making a negative adjustment of 10%. They are followed by Deep Capital Management, which closed its book yesterday at 6 naira 86 kobo, equally in the negative 9.97%. They are followed by Multiverse Mining and Exploration, which closed trading yesterday at 22 naira 70 kobo, equally in the negative 9.92%. And we're looking at Living Trust Mortgage Bank, which closed its book yesterday at 5 naira 90 kobo, equally in the negative 9.92% adjustment. And the last on this is Ella Lakes PLC, which closed its book at 11 naira 55 kobo, equally in the negative 9.77%. And then we'll take a look at Wall Street. Yesterday, Monday, February 2023, Wall Street fell sharply, and as a surprise, 15% tariff hike and AI-driven software apocalypse fears, rattled investors. And when we take a look at the numbers, Dow Jones 48,804.5, making a negative 1.67%, dropping 822 points. And then look at S&P, which yesterday closed at 500, at 6,837.75, making a negative minus 1.0% in its adjustment. And Nasdaq closed at $22,627.27, making a minus 1.13%. And then when we look at market movers, the top gainers, we see SLS making a plus 7.4% on news of its $7.8 billion acquisition by Gillard. Then the top losers here is Novo Nordisk, which made a minus 16.4% after a major obesity drug trial disappointed. And then we saw AIG as IBM in the negative as well, making a minus 13.1%, and CrowdStrike equally in the negative, making a minus 9.9% in the negative, plugged as new AI tools threaten their core business models. And when we take a look at the Asia market, as yesterday rallied broadly, relieved by a US Supreme Court ruling that initially struck down several major trade tariffs. The key indices here is that Hong Kong Hang Seng, the star performer, surging plus 2.53% to close at 27,081.91. And looking at South Korea Kospi, which gained plus 0.65 as tech and export breathed a sigh of relief. And moving over to India, we saw Sensex, which rose to plus 0.69%, which is up by 572 points to close at 83,386.81. Then led by banks. And at Australia, we saw ASS 200 buck the trend, sliding minus 0.61% due to local selling pressure. And Japan and China markets were closed for public holiday. That's the lunar year in China. Then when we take a look at the market drivers, we'll see that the rally was fueled by the US Supreme Court's illegal ruling on previous tariffs, which triggered a relief rally across Asian export hubs before late-night tariff updates from the US changed the mood for Tuesday. Then moving over to the Naira performance, we'll tell you that the Naira experienced a slight dip yesterday, Monday, February 23, 2026, as demand for the greenback edged higher across official and parallel markets. And then in the Nigeria Autonomous Foreign Exchange Market, the Naira weakened slightly against the US dollar, closing at 1,348 Naira against the dollar, which previously was at 1,344 as at Friday. Then this change, we saw a depreciation of approximately 0.30%. Then moving on over to the parallel market, which is called the black market, the informal market, we saw more pronounced volatility as speculators reacted to tightened liquidity. The average rate as at yesterday was 1,355 to 1,365 naira against the dollar. This trend, was led due to naira traded at a slightly premium compared to official rate, though the gap remains significantly narrower than in previous years due to ongoing central bank interventions. Then when we take a look at the key drivers, we saw increased demand, and then due to the external reserves, these were the key drivers of the market. When you look at the increased demand, renewed demand from importers and manufacturers for end of month obligations pressure the local currency. And at the external reserve, market sentiment remained cautiously optimistic as foreign reserves hold steady, providing the CBN with some firepower to manage extreme volatility. Now let's take a look at Brent crude performance. Brent crude price saw some moderate volatility yesterday as the market weighed geopolitical risk against a softening economic outlook. And taking a look at the price performance, we saw that settlements, the Brent crude future settled at approximately $71.49 per barrel, leading a daily change that is slightly decrease of about 0.27 dollar, making a 0.38% compared to the previous close. And then when we look at the market drivers for yesterday, we saw that geopolitical tension, which made prices were initially supported by concerns over potential military confrontation between the US and Iran. Market remains sensitive until any risk involving the Strait of Hormuz, a critical corridor for global oil supply. And then we'll look at another market driver, which is the diplomatic softening. During the late day retreat in prices was attributed to news of upcoming nuclear talks between the US and Iran in Geneva, which eased immediate fears of supply disruption. And then looking at global demand concern, a slump in global equity market yesterday sparked some long liquidation. Investors selling to lock in profits due to renewed concern about global economic outlook and its impact on energy demand. Another issue that is a key market driver is Goldman Sachs outlook. The bank has raised its quarter 4 2026 Brent forecast to $60. That has citing lower than expected inventory builds, though they still project a global surplus for the year. And then in comparison, West Texas Intermediate, the US benchmark followed a similar trend, closing down roughly at 0.26% to settle near 66.64 dollar per barrel. And that's all we can bring to you on the business news update. But please do remember that before you make any incursion into the Nigerian financial markets, speaking to the stock market, please do consult a certified financial expert due to the volatility of the market. Thank you.
All right, and that's all for today's edition on Sunrise. I'm Good Hope Chukuma. Thank you for waking up with us.
All right, and on behalf of all of us here on Sunrise at ANEKE TV, we'll say thank you for watching and keep watching till we come your way same time tomorrow. I am Uche Osai. Bye-bye.